coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, but originally from Neptune, New Jersey. Forget about it. I want to go back to September 29th, 2006. That's when Petty Officer Michael Monsoor is a United States Navy SEAL operating in Ramadi, Iraq. Monsoor is standing on a roof in Ramadi, and he has two Navy SEAL colleagues lying in the sniper-prone position next to him. Monsoor is actually standing in front of a doorway to this roof, and he and his team have already taken AK-47 fire and a rocket-propelled grenade, but they're not exactly sure where the enemy is. There's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Insurgents have blocked off the streets in Ramadi, and there's someone on the loudspeaker in the town mosque yelling, "Kill the Americans!" As Monsoor and his team are looking for the next attack, an insurgent from an unknown location throws a grenade up on the roof. It hits Monsoor in the chest, and it falls to his feet. Due to the length of the throw, there's no opportunity to pick it up and throw it back. He has only a split second to make a decision. He can leap through the doorway behind him and save himself, but if he does, his two teammates lying on the roof will surely die. Monsoor yells, "Grenade!" But instead of jumping backward to save himself, he jumps forward chest first onto the grenade. It detonates. 30 minutes later, 25-year-old Michael Monsoor is dead. His two teammates lying on the roof receive only minor injuries because Monsoor's body muffled the blast. In fact, one of those survivors said at Monsoor's funeral, "Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, 'You will not take my friends, I will go in their stead.'" I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President George W. Bush called Monsoor's parents into the East Room of the White House to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously. The president couldn't even get through the citation without breaking down. Since then, Monsoor's high school in Garden Grove, California, built a new stadium. They named it Michael A. Monsoor Memorial Stadium. The golden trident insignia that the SEALs wear dominates the 50-yard line. January 2019, just outside of San Diego, California, the United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Monsoor, the newest guided missile destroyer in the fleet, Zumwalt class. This is Monsoor's mother, Sally, being escorted onto the ship named in honor of her fallen son. Now, why did they do this? Because Michael Monsoor literally sacrificed himself to save his friends. There's no greater love than to sacrifice yourself to save your friends, said Jesus of Nazareth before he went to the cross. Michael Monsoor sacrificed himself to save his friends. The question is, would anybody sacrifice himself to save you? And the answer is, someone already has. His name is Jesus of Nazareth. But in today's culture, a lot of people don't think the story's true. They think it's invented. They think it was made up. And it's got miracles in it. A resurrection's a miracle. We don't believe in miracles anymore. How could we believe such a story is true? Well, I actually think it's quite easy to show that Christianity is true. You only need to answer 4 questions in the affirmative to show that Christianity is true. In other words, if you investigate these 4 questions, I think you'll realize that the answer to these 4 questions is yes. And if the answer to these 4 questions is yes, because there's evidence that shows the answer to these 4 questions is yes, then Christianity is true. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And is the New Testament true? Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why are these the 4 questions? Well, let's just briefly go through them. The first question, does truth exist? Why is that important? Because you always hear people saying, well, there is no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. You've heard these claims. Well, if there is no truth, then quite obviously Christianity can't be true. Of course, if there's no truth, then atheism can't be true either, right? Actually, there is truth. We're going to go through that question here tonight. In fact, you wouldn't even be going to Rutgers if there was no truth. I mean, why do you go to school? Well, supposedly you're going to school to learn truth, right? That's the whole point. So we'll deal with that question first. Second question, does God exist? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if there's no God. I hope to show you tonight that there really is a theistic God. What do I mean by a theistic God? A spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who created all things and sustains all things to this very moment, and whose every attribute is infinite. We're going to look at three arguments for this being. These arguments are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them. In fact, we can establish point 2 without reference to the Bible. The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if miracles don't happen, but I hope to show you tonight that not only are miracles possible, but the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and even atheists are admitting the data for this miracle. Now, the key question is, the fourth question, is the New Testament true? It doesn't have to be inerrant. It just has to be historically reliable enough to let us know if one particular event occurred, and that event is the resurrection. Because if Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity's true. Of course, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, game over, it's false. You might as well sleep in on Sunday and do what you want the rest of the week, because if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, as the Apostle Paul said, your faith is in vain. There's no reason to be a Christian if Jesus didn't rise from the dead. Now, we can't go through all of these questions here tonight. We don't have time, and I want to get to your questions. So we're going to cover point 1 and maybe 2/3 of point 2. And hopefully we're going to come to Rutgers in person, maybe next semester. We're working out a date now if Rutgers will open up again. And we'll cover the whole thing and take your questions then. And at the end of this, I'll show you how you can get this entire PowerPoint presentation I'm going to show you. In fact, I can't show you the whole thing. I can only show you a portion of it. But I'm going to give it to you for free here at the end. So if you can't keep up, it's no big deal. But since you are from New Jersey, you probably can keep up, because you speak at 150 words a minute with Gus to 350, just like I do. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start right here at point 1. Does truth exist? And whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson, right? Because Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand. And what did he say? Well, here's what he said.
The truth. You can't handle the truth.
I don't know if you could hear that, but you know what he said. He said, I want the truth. And Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. Well, there's a lot of people in our culture today that can't handle the truth. They say things like, there is no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. There are no absolutes, you ought not judge. They're making all of these truth claims while claiming there is no truth. What I'm about to show you, I think, is the most important thinking skill we're going to talk about here tonight. And to show you what a dimwit I was 33 years old. I already had a master's degree, and I did not know what I'm about to tell you right now. And it's so simple. And it's so simple, and it's so powerful, because if you get this thinking skill down, the thinking skill we're going to talk about, half of what you need to know, you'll already know to defend the Christian faith. Even if you're an atheist here tonight, this is going to be helpful to you. Why? Because this thinking skill will help you discover what is false. And half the battle in going through life is just discovering what is false. Because if you can discover what is false, you can avoid what is false and then concentrate on what is true. And the easiest way of showing you this thinking skill is to give you an example of using it. And it goes like this. If someone were to come up to you and say, there is no truth, you should ask that person a question. What should the question be? Yeah, the question should be, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true. This is what is known as a self-defeating statement. A self-defeating statement doesn't meet its own standard. A self-defeating statement violates the law of non-contradiction, which says that opposite ideas cannot be both true at the same time and in the same sense. For example, the earth can't be both round and not round at the same time and in the same sense. It either is round or it's not round, but it's not both. right? God can't exist and not exist at the same time and in the same sense. He either exists or he doesn't, but not both. Now, these self-defeating statements are easy to detect once you learn what to do. And here's the thinking skill. When somebody says something like this, what you want to do is turn the claim on itself. Turn the claim on itself. So if somebody says there's no truth, you turn the claim on itself and you say, is that true? So if I were to say I can't speak a word in English, you would turn the claim on itself and say, didn't you just say that in English? Right? This is a self-defeating statement. Let's do a few more of these, because by just looking at self-defeating statements and turning the claim on itself, you can see the power of this technique. If someone were to come up to you and say all truth is relative, if you turn the claim on itself, what would you say back to them? Well, you simply ask the question, is that a relative truth? No, that's an absolute truth. You're claiming all truth is relative while uttering an absolute truth. That's like saying I can't speak a word in English. Or it's like saying my parents had no kids that lived. Or it's like saying my brother is an only child, right? These are self-defeating statements. And once you get good at recognizing self-defeating statements, it's going to save you a lot of pain and suffering. Why? Because if you start living by false principles, ultimately you're going to smack up against reality and it's going to hurt. This one here is my favorite. It's true for you, but not for me. What would you say to somebody who said that? I mean, this is also self-defeating. It's just a little bit more subtle. If someone were to say it's true for you, but not for me, what you want to say is, hey, is that true for everybody? Is true for you, but not for me, true for everybody? Because if true for you, but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you, but not for me can't be true, because it's true for everybody. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough, but that's because it's self-defeating. It's like saying I can't speak a word in English. Actually, there's a more fun way of dealing with this. If somebody says it's true for you, but not for me, say, sure, go try that with your bank teller. Yeah, go to your bank teller and say, I'd like $100,000 out of my account. The bank teller looks at your account and says, I'm sorry, I only have $6.12 in your account. It's easy to get the money. You simply say, that's true for you, but not for me. Give me the 100 grand. Are you going to get the money? No. If it's true, there was only $6.12 in your account. That's true for all people at all times in all places when we're referring to your account at that time. It's just true. By the way, it's also true that if Jesus rose from the dead, that's true whether you believe it or not. And it's also true that if he didn't rise from the dead, then that statement is true whether you believe it or not. So truth isn't my truth or your truth. Truth is just truth. You're going to hear this a lot too, particularly in academia. You're going to hear this statement: there is no truth in anything but science. You know, science gives us all of our truth. Well, apply the claim to itself. If someone were to say there's no truth in anything but science, what would you ask them? Simply ask them, is that a scientific truth? Can you go in the laboratory and prove that? No, that's a philosophical claim. And the secret that few people seem to get who make statements like this is that you can't do science without philosophy. Science is built on philosophy. In fact, you can't read the Bible without philosophy. You can't read the newspaper without philosophy. Everything is built on philosophy. I wrote a book not long ago. The book is called Stealing from God: Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. And there's a chapter in here on science, and the title of the chapter is this: Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. Why do I say that? Because all data needs to be gathered and all data needs to be interpreted. And who does that? Science doesn't do that. Scientists do that. You ever wonder why you get conflicting advice on COVID? Why do you get conflicting advice? Because scientists interpret the data. Sometimes they have different data, so they come to different conclusions. Sometimes they have the same data, but they interpret the data in a different way, so they come to different conclusions. So science doesn't say a word. Scientists say things, and sometimes their atheistic presuppositions can determine how they interpret the data. And so you've really got to be aware that science doesn't say anything. Scientists say things. And when you think about this, really, the most important things in life have nothing to do with science. Honey, do you love me? I don't know. Let's run an experiment. No, the most important things in life don't have anything to do with science. Justice has nothing to do with science. You know justice exists, but you don't put justice in a test tube in the lab. Justice, just like love, is an immaterial value, an immaterial virtue grounded in the nature of God. If God doesn't exist, there's no such thing as justice. In fact, there's no such thing as love either. How about this? You're going to hear this a lot. This is a skeptical claim. You should doubt everything. If someone says this and you turn the claim on itself, what would you say in return? If someone says you should doubt everything, you should say, should I doubt that? I mean, why are skeptics skeptical of everything but skepticism? You notice they don't doubt skepticism. Now, by the way, I can see a few of you here in the gallery here. How many people here, regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, how many people here sometimes doubt that what you believe is true? Just put your hand up for just a second. Look, if you don't have your hand up, you're probably not thinking very much, right? I mean, I've written books on this stuff, and sometimes I wake up in the morning and I go, I don't even know if this is true. You ever do that? But then I start thinking about my doubts, and I realize that when I'm doubting, most of my doubts are emotional. They're not intellectual. In other words, the evidence for Christianity is really good, but my psychology is such that I don't think it's really good that day. If I'm having a bad day, I don't think so. Good day, everything's fine. Bad day, don't know. Good day, fine. Bad day, don't know. What's changing? Me or the evidence? Me, I'm going up and down. The evidence doesn't change. Your psychology is not going to tell you whether or not Christianity is true. In fact, your psychology is not going to tell you whether anything's true. The evidence will. In fact, sometimes when I see people on a college campus and they'll say to me, hey, Frank, I used to be a Christian, but I lost my faith. No, I don't mean to be unkind, but sometimes I am because I'm originally from New Jersey. And when they say I lost my faith, I almost want to say to them, so are you telling me because your psychology changed, Jesus didn't rise from the dead, or God has now popped out of existence? I mean, your psychology is not the point here. The point is the evidence. And I think if you take a hard look at the evidence, you'll realize that the evidence is quite good, and you should therefore then start doubting your doubts, because if you start doubting your doubts, then you're back to knowing something for sure. Have you guys ever thought about doubting your doubts? I doubt it. All right, how about this one? You hear this a lot too. This is big in our culture. You ought not judge. Now, if you turn the claim on itself, what would you say to somebody who says you ought not judge? Simply ask, hey, isn't that a judgment? Or you can say, if we ought not judge, why are you judging me for judging? You say, wait a minute, Frank, time out. Didn't Jesus say don't judge? Nope, never said it. You say, sure he did. He said it in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. All right, I know this is what I'm about to say is going to sound a little odd, but it's true. There are no verses in the Bible. There are no verses in the Bible. Do you think when Matthew was writing the Gospel of Matthew, he said, here's chapter 7, verse 1? No. The chapter and verse divisions were put in about 500 years ago to help us navigate the text, which is a good thing, because it would be really hard to find your way around 31,000 verses which are in the Bible without numbers, right? The problem is that we tend to think if it's got a number in front of it, we can take it out and make it say whatever we want. You can't do that. So Jeremiah 29:11 is not for you. I know I just annoyed a lot of you people because you probably have that stitched to a pillow somewhere, right? Or you have it in a needlepoint, but on the wall somewhere. No, Jeremiah 29:11, oh, the plans I have for you, that has nothing to do with Christians. That has to do with people who lived 2,600 years ago. And unless you're living in Iraq under Nebuchadnezzar and you're 2,600 years old, then Jeremiah 29:11 is not for you. And it's amazing. We always quote Jeremiah 29:11. Oh, the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you. Why do we never quote Jeremiah 44:11? Because what does Jeremiah 44:11 say? It says, I will destroy you and all of Judah. You don't see that in a birthday card, right? You don't get a birthday card that says Jeremiah 44:11 and you open it up and it says, I will destroy you and all of Judah. Oh, thank you so much, Grandma. No. We only take the verses out of context that we like. And this verse, you ought not judge, is taken out of context as well. Why? Because what does Jesus say? He says, judge not, lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge others, you be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, you hypocrite. By the way, that's a judgment when he calls somebody a hypocrite, right? He says, take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. So this is not a command not to judge. It's actually a command on how to judge. In other words, don't judge hypocritically. If you've got that problem, fix it, then go help your brother. But it would be completely ridiculous to say don't make judgments. Why? Because number one, it's a judgment itself. And number two, you'd be dead already if you didn't make judgments. You've made 100 judgments today, just between good and evil, safe choices and dangerous choices. And by the way, everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments. They judge there's no God. They judge the Bible's faults. They judge that there's no meaning to life and you were just going to die and become worm food. Have a nice day. That's atheism. Those are all judgments. So the question isn't whether or not you can make judgments. The question is, are your judgments true? By the way, I've noticed this. You ever notice that when you compliment somebody, which is a judgment, nobody gets upset? You know, like if you say to your best friend, I really love you. You're such a wonderful person. I wish I could be like you. You think your friend's going to go, who are you to judge? No, they're never going to say that, right? Why? Because I've noticed that people don't have a problem with judging. They just have a problem with judgments they don't like. And by the way, if you tell somebody something that's true and they get annoyed with you, you just help convict them. As Augustine said, we love the truth when it enlightens us. We hate the truth when it convicts us. Jesus said, men love darkness rather than light. We don't want people telling us the truth half the time because that's going to expose what we're doing, and we don't want our evil deeds exposed. Now, we could spend a lot more time on this section, but we don't have time because I want to get to the second point here, does God exist? And then I want to get to your questions, but I want to sum it up this way. Can everybody see that this statement right here, there is no truth, shoots itself? Can everyone see that? So do all the other statements we went through. All truth is relative, it's true for you, but not for me. All truth comes from science. You should doubt everything. You ought not judge. And 100 other statements you're going to hear in the culture. And all you need to do is turn the claim on itself. So the bottom line to this point here, does truth exist, is that yes, truth exists, which means that relativism and postmodernism are false. Why? Because they claim it's true that there is no truth. So you can't get away from truth. Well, actually, you can get away from it temporarily. How do you get away from it temporarily? You suppress it. The Apostle Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 1, that we suppress the truth and unrighteousness to go our own way, which is why, by the way, on a college campus during Q&A, and usually atheists will show up for the Q&A, and I'm grateful for that. And maybe there's some atheists here tonight. Thank you for coming and being a part of this. I may ask you a question if you ask a question later on, if you claim to be an atheist, and it's only fair for me to tip you off on what the question is now. Here's the question I may ask you. The question is this: if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I've had atheists stand in front of the microphone, in front of hundreds of people, and I ask them that question: if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And they say, no. No? I thought you claimed to be reasonable. How is it reasonable that you wouldn't believe something if it were true? It's not reasonable. The problem isn't in the head. The problem's in the heart. They don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God. Why? Because they want to be God of their own lives. They're not on a truth quest. They're on a happiness quest. And they're just going to believe whatever they think is going to make them happy. And Christians, we do this sometimes too. We avoid inconvenient truths because we want to do our own thing. We think if we make truth up in our own life, that somehow it's going to make us happy. Well, it's not, unfortunately. You can make yourself happy over the short term, doing a lot of fun things, but over the long term, it's a disaster. Just ask anybody over 40, they'll tell you. If you want to get contentment, if you want to get truth, if you want to get eternity, certainly, you have to go straight through truth, and Jesus is the truth. So always ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? So truth does exist. So this means Christianity could be true, or atheism could be true, or some other ism could be true at this point. But now let's take a look at question number 2. The question is, does God exist? Is it true that God exists? And I mentioned there are 3 arguments for a theistic God. We don't have time to go in any depth on these. I'll just mention them briefly. I'll spend a little bit of time on the second one more than the first. The first argument is the argument from the beginning of the universe, known as the cosmological argument. Cosmological just comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. And it says if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The second argument is the argument from design, known as the teleological argument. And telos is a Greek word meaning design or purpose. And it says if there's design in the universe and design in you, life, there must be a designer. Now, there's some scientific evidence behind these two arguments. We'll see a little bit of it here tonight. The third argument is not scientific in nature. It's more philosophical, yet it's the argument we've all known since we were very small children. It's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no standard beyond humanity, no standard of goodness that we're obligated to obey, then everything's just a matter of opinion. That's just your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion, or your opinion against Hitler's opinion. Without God, everything's just a matter of opinion. Now, we know those things aren't. Murder is not just a matter of opinion. So there must be a standard beyond us to which we're obligated to obey. And that's what we mean by God's nature. And you know, there's a lot of people in our country right now concerned about justice. We all are. But do you realize that justice doesn't exist unless God exists? Do you realize there are no rights unless God exists? If there's no God, it's just a matter of preference. We don't have time to get into that now. We're going to start right here at the cosmological argument. Now, you got to admit, it was worth tuning here tonight just to see God move like that, wasn't it? Did you see that? Some of you have said, I've never seen God move. Oh, really? Check this out. Look at that right there. Now, this cosmological argument is the argument that many say points back to the big. Now, I know there are some Christians here going, Frank, we don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. In fact, the evidence for the Big Bang is so good that even atheistic scientists are admitting it. Stephen Hawking, the most probably popular atheist physicist in the world until he died a few years ago, put it this way. He said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tried to come up with another explanation other than God. He failed, but he's admitting the data. He's admitting that space-time and matter literally had a beginning out of nothing. Now, we're not going to go through the evidence here tonight for this. Why? Number one, we don't have time. Number two, it's all in the book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, chapter 3. And number 3, it's not even controversial. Most atheists will admit this, that space-time and matter had a beginning out of nothing. So I just want to jump to the bottom line here tonight. Here's the bottom line to this particular piece of evidence, or the fact that the universe had a beginning. If the universe had a beginning, we got two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic view, or someone created something out of nothing, which is the theistic view. Now, here's my only question. Which view is more reasonable? That no one created something out of nothing, or that someone created something out of nothing? Well, I was at Texas A&M probably 15 years ago. I put this slide up, and a student said, oh, I think number 1 is more reasonable. I said, time out. Let's look at number 2 first. Number 2 says someone created something out of nothing. Now, that's a miracle, right? But at least you got a miracle worker. You got someone. Number 1 is a miracle with no miracle worker. That's clearly absurd. In fact, I said to the audience at Texas A&M that night, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality. You know, by the way, the law of causality doesn't say everything has a cause. The law of causality says everything that comes to be has a cause. There has to be a self-existent first cause. Otherwise, nothing would exist. It's either the universe or something outside the universe. Aristotle knew this. Aquinas knew this. There has to be an uncaused first cause. The only question, what is it? All right. So I said to the audience at A&M that night, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality, that things don't pop into existence out of nothing by nothing without a cause. There is nobody currently sitting here tonight who is worried that as you sit here, a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing by nothing in your dorm room and is currently pooping on your pillow. right? You're not worried about that. You're not worried that things are going to pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause. Why? Because things don't happen that way. And if they did, by the way, you couldn't do science, right? Because what does science do? Science looks at effects and it says, okay, what caused this effect? If you're going to say you can have effects without causes, how can you do science? You can't. Now, there are atheists out there who are claiming that no one created something out of nothing. One of them is Lawrence Krauss, a physicist, used to teach at Arizona State University. I respond to him in the book, Stealing from God. And by the way, think about this, ladies and gentlemen, do you realize that everyone believes in at least one miracle? I mean, Christians believe in more than one miracle, but we certainly believe in the first miracle, that someone created something out of nothing. Atheists, their miracle is no one created something out of nothing. Now, my only question is, which view takes more faith? That someone created something out of nothing, or that no one created something out of nothing? It seems to me the atheists have all the faith. All right. Now, if space-time and matter literally had a beginning out of nothing, what could have caused that? Seems to me whatever caused space-time and matter can't be made of space-time and matter. In other words, the cause must transcend space-time and matter. And the cause can't be natural. Why? Because nature was created. Nature didn't exist. So something beyond nature, something we would call supernature, brought it into existence. So the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create, because to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, someone had to make a choice, and only persons can make choices. The being would also have to be intelligent in order to have a mind to make a choice. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? God. You say, well, Frank, how do you know it's the Christian God? We don't yet. We haven't done enough research yet. This could be Allah at this point, or some other theistic God. I mean, it could be the God of the Bible, but we don't know that yet. We don't have all the attributes yet. To see if it's a God of the Bible, you have to continue through the questions we first started asking. Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And is the New Testament reliable enough to let us know whether Jesus rose from the dead? Because if Jesus did rise from the dead, then the God that created the universe is the same God that walked out of the tomb 1,988 years ago in his human nature. But we don't know that yet. We don't get all the way to the Bible or all the way to the Christian God just by this one argument. We get 6 attributes, which are attributes of the Christian God, but we need more attributes to know if this is the Christian God. All right. Now, there's a lot more in the book on this. Here's one more question to ask before we leave this argument, and that is this. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? That's a question to ask an atheist. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? In other words, if there is no God, why does anything exist? All right, the second argument is the argument from design, known as the teleological argument. And there are 2 aspects to this argument. One is that the universe appears to be designed, and secondly, life appears to be designed. We only have time to cover the universe. And the fact that the universe appears to be designed is something that is tied up in what has been discovered in recent decades called fine-tuning, the fine-tuning of the universe. And what this means is it appears that the universe has attributes about it that are so precisely tweaked that they are just where they need to be, that if you were to change any one of a number of attributes about our universe, virtually imperceptibly, there would be no universe, or the universe would exist, but it wouldn't support life. I'm just going to give you a couple of these. And we're going to start with atheist Stephen Hawking again, who put it this way. He said, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. In other words, if the expansion rate was that infinitesimally different from the very beginning, we wouldn't be here. Now, you can't come up with any evolutionary explanation for this. You can't say, well, the expansion rate evolved to this point by chance. Why? Because this is where the expansion rate started. This is one of the initial conditions of the universe. It seems to me the same being that created space-time and matter is the same being that fine-tuned the expansion rate to such a precise degree so we'd even be talking here tonight. Also, the gravitational force, if it were altered by more than 1 in 10 to the 40th power, we wouldn't exist. What's 10 or 1 in 10 to the 40th power? That's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. I know, neither can I. So let me give you an illustration. Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. That's a long way. Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I realize gravity is not measured in inches, but this is just to give you a scale idea in your mind. If the strength of gravity were different by 1 inch in either direction across a scale as wide as the entire known universe, we wouldn't be here. That's 1 in 10 to the 40th precision. I don't have enough faith to believe that that value just landed there by chance. And oh, by the way, does chance cause things? Is chance a cause? Who caused this? Chance. He was just here. No. Chance is not a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. So when scientists use the word chance, what do they really mean? What they mean is, we don't know. That's what they mean. But look, there's only 2 possible reasons for that value being where it is today. It was designed to be there, or it wasn't. Which makes more sense? Yeah, it was designed. Now, not only are these constants about our attributes about our universe, not only do they appear to be designed and fine-tuned, our solar system appears to be designed with us in mind. Let's take a look at the solar system here. Here we are in the third solar system, third rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away from the sun, we couldn't survive. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It is just right. That's a lie. It's too cold in New Jersey in the winter. I know, I used to live there. All right. The axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us, change that slightly, we don't exist. If Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we wouldn't be here. Why? What does Jupiter do for us? Jupiter's gravitational force attracts most of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. If it didn't do that, we wouldn't stay in orbit, which means we couldn't live. In fact, here's a close-up look at Jupiter. Those dark plumes you see on Jupiter are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter, because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Same thing is true with Saturn. In fact, you want to take a look at the planets. Here they are. You got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down there. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. All right, take a look at this. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. Here's the sun over here to the right. Jupiter, 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. All right, keep an eye on Arcturus now. Where's Arcturus now? Look all the way to the right, just to the right of Regal. That's Arcturus. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about it. Antares, that star is in our galaxy. In fact, if our Earth was the size of a golf ball, Betelgeuse here would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. The heavens are awesome. And that's just in our galaxy. That's not outside our galaxy. That's inside our galaxy. And the average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles. And all that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. If that distance was modified slightly, we wouldn't have life here on Earth. Now, how far is 30 trillion miles? Far. It'll take you at least 2 tanks of gas in a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. Do you remember when the space shuttle was in orbit? We used to put the space shuttle up. You know how fast the space shuttle used to go when it was in orbit? It would go about 18,000 miles an hour, or about 5 miles per second. I did a little calculation to try and figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away, 30 trillion miles. In other words, how long would it take us to go 30 trillion miles if we could go 5 miles a second? You know how long it would take us? It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away, you've been going 5 miles a second for 2,000 years, you'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We're not going anywhere in space. We can hardly get out of our solar system. It took us 9 years to get to Pluto. We're not going anywhere. Now, how many stars are out there? What I'm about to show you is some video from the Hubble Space Telescope. It's called Hubble Ultra Deep Field. This is in the public domain. You can Google it. What is Hubble Ultra Deep Field? A number of years ago, they trained the Hubble Space Telescope on 1/24 millionth of the sky. What's 1/24 millionth of the sky? Go outside tonight, put a piece of rice on the end of your finger and hold it up. That piece of rice represents about 1/24 millionth of the sky. So they trained Hubble for several months on that 1/24 millionth piece of the sky. And I'm going to show you what they found. Now, I don't know if you can see this picture in front of you here, but at the bottom of this picture are mountains. And that's a picture of the southern sky above it. And when I start the video, you're going to see the constellations come up. And then Hubble is going to zoom in on 1/24 millionth of the sky. There is no audio. It's just video. Are you ready? Are you ready? All right, here we go. There's the constellations. Let's go now see what Hubble found. What you're looking at are nearly 10,000 galaxies in 1/24 millionth of the sky. If that's what's in 1/24 millionth of the sky, how many stars are out there? Scientists estimate that the number of stars out there are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the Earth times 100,000. Now you know why the Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God. Now you know why in Isaiah chapter 40, when God is speaking, he says this: "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One." In other words, God says, you want a comparison to what I'm like? Here it is. Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these stars and named them one by one? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. No, you want to know what God is like? Look to the heavens. What do you see when you look to the heavens? You see stars equivalent to grains of sand on 100,000 Earths, and to go between just 2 stars in our galaxy alone, going 5 miles a second will take you over 200,000 years. I don't want anybody listening to me right now to ever use the word awesome again, except if you're talking about the heavens or God. What word are we going to reserve for God if we call everything awesome? This is what we mean by awesome. This is what God means by awesome. Now, you might be thinking, Frank, this is such a vast universe. Why would God care about me? Well, you can read Psalm 8, but you can also read Psalm 103, which says this: for as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far as he removed our transgressions from us. You see, as amazing as the heavens are, they're not as amazing as you are. Why? The heavens aren't made in the image of God, but you are. And God literally added human flesh to his deity to come to earth and to remove our transgressions from us. Now, if you're going through a particularly difficult time right now, and everyone will at some point, when you think about the difficulty you're going through and you go, God, I don't even know, I can't see any good reason for this. Is it possible that the God who created and sustains all those stars has a reason for what you're going through, even if you never find out this side of eternity what that reason is? Yep. Now, if we had time, and we don't, we would go through the evidence that you're designed as well. We'll save that for when we come, hopefully next semester in person. We'll also cover the moral argument. And by the way, if we add these 3 arguments up, what attributes do we get from these 3 arguments? A spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, moral creator who created all things and sustains all things. These are the attributes of the God of the Bible, and we haven't even opened the Bible yet. This is just from natural theology. Just looking at the effects of the natural world and reasoning back to a cause. So when we come back, Lord willing, or when we come to Rutgers, Lord willing, we'll go through these arguments again, and we'll cover, are miracles possible, and is the New Testament true? Let me just say one thing about miracles. A lot of people don't believe in miracles, but I think miracles have already occurred. The greatest miracle in the Bible is what? It's not the resurrection. The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The interesting thing is even atheists are admitting the data for that miracle. They're admitting that space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing. They don't think it's God, but what else could it be? As we went through the attributes already, it's got to be a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause. So if God can create the universe out of nothing, can he resurrect Jesus from the dead? Yeah, of course. Can he walk on water? Of course. Can he turn water into wine, part the Red Sea, make axe heads float in water, heal people? Of course he can. So miracles certainly are possible. Now, if you really want to go deeper into this, we have books available. We have a DVD set you can get on our website. But if you don't do anything else, just text the word evidence, just the word evidence, not quotes on it, just evidence to 44222. I'm going to send you this PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format, including all the slides I couldn't show you, so you can look at it at your leisure. We're also going to send you the first chapter, Stealing from God, for free, and a bunch of other stuff. So just text the word evidence to 44222. And also download our app, the Cross-Examined app. 2 words in the App Store, Cross-Examined. And it's got our podcast on there. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist podcast once a week. Has our TV show on there once a week. Has a quick answer section. There's a lot of free stuff on there as well. But you know what the best thing about all this is, and we're about to celebrate Easter, is that someone really did die for you. Jesus of Nazareth died for you. And by trusting in him, you can have your sins forgiven. When I was in the Navy many years ago, I was in naval aviation. And we had to earn golden wings, which were hard enough to earn. But there's no more difficult insignia in the United States Navy to earn than a golden trident. That's what the SEALs earn. Very few people that start SEAL training make it through. Just a handful make it through. Those that do make it through wear that trident with pride. It's literally their identity. When Michael Monsoor was buried in Rosecrans Cemetery just outside of San Diego, just about every Navy SEAL on the West Coast showed up for his funeral. And when they passed his casket, they took off their tridents and they pressed them into his casket. They took their identity and they put their identity in the one that died for them, in the one who saved them. That's what we're supposed to do. But our culture says, no, don't put your identity in that. Put your identity in your political party, or put your identity in your race. There's only one race, the human race. Or put your identity in your sexual orientation, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or your school, or your bank account, or your vocation. No, none of those things are ultimate, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing that's ultimate is Christ, because he's the ultimate one. And an eyewitness who was with Jesus and recorded what Jesus said and did, his name was John. The biography he wrote of Jesus is called the Gospel of John. He says in the 12th verse of the first chapter that he has given you the right to become a child of God. And then once you become a child of God, that's your identity. Your identity is in Christ. That can never be taken away from you. It's eternal.